George Russell didn't lose the Belgian Grand Prix because of one crash. He may have lost something far bigger. Hidden team radio, fresh Mercedes evidence, and a technical investigation now expose a far more uncomfortable truth. The battery failure wasn't the whole story, because while Russell was screaming that his car had no power, his teammate Kimi Antonelli suffered the same software problem and still won the race. That's where this story becomes explosive. For weeks, Mercedes believed George Russell's mysterious deployment deficit was simply a consequence of driving style. Since Silverstone, engineers had detected differences in how Russell and Kimi Antonelli extracted electrical energy from the W17. Russell even adjusted his technique before arriving at Spa, hoping to erase the gap. Instead, the problem survived, and on Formula One's longest flat-out section, the consequences became devastating. But there's a catch. Newly uncovered radio messages reveal Mercedes assured Russell they were happy with the SOC level before the race even began. Moments later, he was desperately shouting that he had no battery along the Kemmel Straight. Meanwhile, Antonelli experienced the very same software limitation, recovered, and still converted pole into victory. So was Russell the victim of terrible luck? Or has Spa exposed a deeper weakness that Mercedes can no longer hide? Before we move on, make sure to smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss out on any of our latest videos. Because the technical clues, political fallout, and one forgotten radio message completely change how this Belgian Grand Prix should be remembered. The first clue sits in a piece of radio communication that television never broadcast. Just minutes before the formation lap, George Russell's race engineer calmly informed him that Mercedes was happy with the SOC level. SOC, state of charge, isn't just another engineering acronym. In Formula One, it is the heartbeat of the hybrid system. It determines how much electrical energy can be deployed down the straights, turning the electric motor into a weapon rather than dead weight. That message matters because it destroys the simplest explanation. If the battery was already compromised before the start, Mercedes would almost certainly have known. Instead, the engineers believed everything was operating within expectation. Somewhere between La Source and Les Combes, something changed dramatically. The investigation now points towards software, not hardware. That's a completely different political problem. Mercedes engineering director Simone Resta confirmed that both cars encountered a software issue that caused them to reach the harvesting limit immediately after turn 1. In simple terms, the car collected less electrical energy than expected while exiting La Source. The consequence was brutal. Both Russell and Antonelli entered the Kemmel Straight carrying significantly less usable battery than their simulations predicted. And Spa is probably the worst circuit imaginable for that failure. Look at the circuit map. After accelerating away from La Source, the cars spend several seconds climbing through Eau Rouge and Raidillon before reaching the Kemmel Straight, one of Formula One's biggest overtaking zones. This entire sequence depends on maximum ERS deployment. Without electrical boost, the engine suddenly feels as though someone has pulled the handbrake. Russell later claimed he reached the top of Eau Rouge with virtually zero battery available. Mercedes' own post-race explanation estimated he was around 35% below the expected deployment level. That's enormous. At modern Formula One speeds, losing that amount of electrical assistance isn't merely inconvenient. It transforms your car from the attacker into the prey. Drivers behind receive slipstream, DRS soon follows, and suddenly defending becomes almost impossible. Now watch what happened next. Charles Leclerc attacked. Lewis Hamilton attacked. Russell, already vulnerable, realised he was becoming a sitting duck. Instead of controlling the corner entry into Les Combes, he was reacting to cars carrying greater momentum. That single technical failure completely altered the geometry of the battle. When Hamilton moved alongside, Russell braked later than usual around the outside, desperately attempting to reclaim track position he believed had been unfairly stolen by the battery deficit. The contact followed almost inevitably. Notice something important. Russell never directed most of his anger toward Hamilton. His fury was aimed almost entirely at Mercedes.
I'm out. What the f*** happened with the sock down the straight? I have no f***ing battery down the straight.
To Russell, the collision wasn't the cause of retirement. It was merely the final consequence. The chain reaction had started nearly a kilometre earlier. Mercedes agrees with part of that assessment. Resta openly admitted both drivers suffered from the same deployment gremlin, confirming the software-limited harvesting after turn 1 and reduced boost all the way toward Les Combes. That admission is significant because it removes one popular theory. This wasn't driver error triggering the problem. This wasn't an isolated battery failure. It was a system-wide software behaviour affecting both Mercedes cars. But this is where the story becomes politically fascinating. Because if both drivers suffered essentially the same limitation, why did only one of them end up buried in the gravel? That's the uncomfortable question Mercedes cannot answer with software alone. Russell's supporters argue the timing hit him harder because he was defending multiple faster cars simultaneously. Critics point toward the other side of the garage. Antonelli also lost deployment. Antonelli also dropped behind Max Verstappen. Yet, within a handful of laps, he recovered, rebuilt his race, managed his energy intelligently, and eventually won the Grand Prix. Same software, same car, completely different ending. That contrast changes the narrative entirely. Mercedes initially believed Russell's deployment inconsistency originated from differences in driving style. Engineers noticed that Antonelli and Russell extracted electrical energy differently through braking zones and corner exits. Russell spent weeks analysing telemetry before Spa, deliberately modifying his driving inputs to better match the data collected from his teammate Kimi Antonelli. He adapted. Mercedes admits he adapted, yet the deployment difference remained. That tells engineers something extremely valuable. Driving style may influence the symptoms, but it isn't the root cause. Instead, Mercedes appears to be confronting a far more complicated interaction between software calibration, harvesting limits, battery management, and real-world race conditions under the new 2026 regulations. And remember, we're only 10 races into an entirely new generation of Formula One cars. Every manufacturer is still discovering hidden behaviours that simulation simply failed to predict. The frightening part? Mercedes believes they still don't fully understand every contributor behind these deployment inconsistencies. That should worry every rival. Because if Mercedes solves this puzzle before Hungary, the championship picture could swing dramatically in their favour. Now, compare the two Mercedes garages, because this is where the numbers become far more damaging than the headlines. George Russell has repeatedly described this season as one disappointment after another. Canada ended with a battery failure while fighting for victory. Monaco unravelled after a controversial penalty. Belgium collapsed because of another deployment issue before the opening lap was even complete. Individually, each excuse sounds reasonable. Collectively, they tell a different story. Because Kimi Antonelli has hardly enjoyed a trouble-free season either. Kimi has suffered a precautionary power unit change in Melbourne. He lost what looked like certain second place in Barcelona after an electrical shutdown. Silverstone should have been another victory before a brake duct problem forced extra pit stops and penalties. Then Spa handed him the very same deployment software issue that crippled Russell. Yet the statistics reveal something extraordinary. Antonelli has experienced only one fewer significant reliability problem than Russell throughout the season. One. That's the entire difference. The championship gap, however, is nearly 50 points. that isn't created by reliability alone. That's created by response. Look carefully at the body language after each setback. Russell climbed out of the car furious, calling the situation unacceptable, and later admitting he had become numb to disappointment. His frustration is understandable. Drivers live on confidence, and repeated failures slowly poison trust between the cockpit and the pit wall. But confidence can also become a trap. Every time a driver starts expecting something to go wrong, every unusual vibration, every dashboard warning, every slight hesitation under acceleration becomes another distraction. Instead of attacking instinctively, you're questioning the machinery beneath you. Formula One punishes hesitation. Antonelli, meanwhile, has displayed almost the opposite mentality. Now watch Toto Wolff's response. The Mercedes boss didn't criticize Russell publicly. Quite the opposite. He immediately defended him, admitting the power issue affected both cars, but insisting George had simply suffered the bigger consequence. He also emphasized that the entire team stood 100% behind Russell. That's exactly what a team principal should say. Publicly. Privately is another matter, because Formula One has always operated on an unspoken rule. Results shift influence. Antonelli now owns 6 victories from 10 races. He's leading the Drivers' Championship. And he's doing it during what was supposed to be Russell's opportunity to establish himself as Mercedes' unquestioned team leader after Lewis Hamilton's departure. Instead, the rookie has quietly rewritten the internal hierarchy, without demanding it, without politics, without complaints, just points. And points are the only language Formula One truly understands. That makes Toto Wolff's next statement even more revealing. Despite Antonelli holding a commanding championship advantage, Mercedes has refused to introduce team orders. On paper, that's admirable. The Constructors' Championship remains the priority, and Wolff insists neither driver will ever be denied a race victory simply because of the standings. But read between the lines, Mercedes doesn't need team orders. Not yet. Antonelli is creating the gap naturally. If Kimi keeps winning while Russell continues losing momentum through mistakes, misfortune or frustration, the championship will choose its own number one. No controversial radio message required. No, let Kimi through. No political storm. Just mathematics. And perhaps that's the biggest twist hidden beneath the Belgian Grand Prix. Everyone has focused on the crash with Hamilton. Everyone has debated the battery failure. Everyone has analysed the 5-second penalty. Yet the real story may be something much quieter. Spa didn't expose a broken Mercedes. It exposed 2 drivers reacting to the same adversity in completely different ways. One saw disaster. The other saw another obstacle to overcome. Sometimes championships aren't decided by who has the fastest car. They're decided by who remains calm when the fastest car suddenly isn't fast anymore. And if Hungary delivers another unpredictable race, Mercedes won't simply be testing a software update. They'll be testing which mentality is truly capable of carrying the weight of a world championship. So here's the question that could define Mercedes' entire 2026 season. Did Spa expose a software problem that robbed George Russell of victory? Or did it expose a championship mentality gap between Russell and Antonelli that no software update can ever fix? Let us know your verdict in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the political battles and hidden stories shaping Formula One.